There's a lady named Lisa who works at Region 2. Now, obviously, I have to say what it is that I'm doing before I do it. There in lies a lot of the issue. I mean, first of all, it shows what I'm trying to do, the efforts that I'm making, but also it allows my predators the opportunity and the chance to cut off my efforts, which they have done repeatedly. Um, there's a lady named, well, the name I put there is Missy Bruce. Missy is a nickname, and Bruce is not her last name. She's remarried, and I'm trying to keep her and her children safe. She is a mandated reporter. Her position makes her a mandated reporter, and she has expressed fears for her family. Mandy has looked at the text messages between myself and Missy. She is aware that I'm telling the truth about this. However, due to the sensitive nature of the issue, the fact that so many mandated reporters are afraid to come forward, afraid to do, well, what mandated reporters are supposed to do. I'm trying to show y'all that it's not what you think it is. And of course, Missy wanted to give the same suggestions as everyone else. She's obviously never been to a homeless shelter. She has obviously never gone to these services. She has no idea what it's about, so she's just throwing out ideas, same ideas as everyone else, and it's of course in texting, so it's slow going. Um, did you see those messages?
Yeah, you can point the camera towards me.
All right.
It's like, yeah. Yes, I viewed the messages through Messenger, and Missy did state, I'm asking politely that you keep me out of this. That's what she said to you verbatim. And that she has children that she is still raising. She has other personal issues, and that she can't get involved. She is concerned for the safety of her children and her family and herself, and therefore cannot or will not, let me state, will not help you. I don't think she's going to fulfill her duty as a court mandated reporter and report it. What was the other thing you had mentioned?
Did I send any messages to her about child abuse? About how I've
Yes.
been trying to turn it in?
Yes, Sean does have documentation of child abuse and sexual assault on children going on, and nobody will take that evidence. And that is not surprising. I've had personal experience with it happening in my family. Not a part of this video, not getting into it, but um, they will not take that. And reaching out to Lisa, I would recommend doing that. I have professional experience with her, not as a client. I'm a client to see what she can do to help you. Um, I can help with a limited scope, and as you know, I've told Sean, I myself could be risking my housing eventually if they come start harassing them. I mean, if I end up homeless, I end up homeless. I ain't afraid of sleeping outside.
Right.
Yeah, like, oh, you're gonna take my housing? Okay, I've been through that before. But people don't want to help Sean, and they don't want to fulfill their duty as a court mandated reporter. Which in Nebraska, everybody is a court mandated reporter. Period. Doesn't matter your capacity. You have to report abuse. So
I've obviously
you
tried
have been
that.
failed over and over and over because the threats, going all the way back to 17, those threats should have been reported to Adult Protective Services, and the appropriate charges should have been filed because you have the evidence of the abuse.
And that's what I was going through these people to do. Now, did she mention about me attempting to get disability in 2017?
Yeah, she does mention that. I've been all the way back to 2017 messages, and she had stated that she thought you were contacting her back then about getting your disability. Um, Even though you got disability back then, doesn't mean your diagnosis started right then. You've been autistic your entire life. We don't wake up one day and go, oh, wow, I feel like I'm autistic.
Right.
You're born with it. It's your entire life. So regardless of when disability was awarded, the diagnosis covers your entire life. You've been an at-risk adult since you turned 18, and you continue to be so. And people are taking advantage of that, knowing this is what I see. A lot of people are becoming aware of what autism is and how people have sensory issues and what can send somebody over the edge, and they are intentionally doing those things. They're overwhelming you, bombing you. It's like info dumping. Well, can you write it down? Okay, well, can you put it on a flash drive? Well, do it right now. Do it right now. I can't. Look at this.
Look at how much there is. Yeah.
I took a picture of it. Well, it's several pictures, and it's a lot. And I've spent what? We didn't do anything Saturday night, very little Sunday, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, part of yesterday, and then today, with going through this, and it's just a dent, just a minor shopping cart dent on the fucking car kind of thing. There's a lot of information, a lot of evidence, and I've stated in earlier evidence. I've already seen the evidence of people assaulting you, people filing false reports. I'm working on compiling that evidence and witnessing it for you for your upcoming court date.
Now, there's a time limit on this, and today's the end of the line, basically. So I got to try to find a safe place for me and for my evidence.
Yep. Yep.
Has anything come of that so far in 5 years of trying?
No. And, I can provide a somewhat safe place for your evidence, but
then I don't have access to it.
Yep.
I can't use it for the courts.
Yeah, you wouldn't. Yeah, exactly. I can't provide a safe place for you to go through all your evidence and be able to have it out and look through it at the times that you need it. There's just no way. Like, they're pretty strict about time limits on guests where I live, and any of my people don't have the ability to provide that either.
Now, did Missy, back in 2017 when I had contacted her, did she give any reasons why there was issues when I tried to call her on the 29th of June of 2017?
She was drunk. She was drunk. I've heard the message she left you, the voice message that she sent you on Messenger, and it's very obvious that the person is inebriated. And then when you told her, don't call me drunk, I need you to be sober, which is what has to happen. You can't show up in court drunk to testify. That gets thrown out. You're not in a sane and stable mind set. And you told her your boundaries. She got very upset and cut off contact with you. And then when you guys did reestablish contact later, she excused it away of, first it was a beer, then it was a wine cooler, and then it was a Mike's. And everybody knows Mike's is stronger than a beer and a wine cooler. It's like just a few percentages below the 211. And it's like at least a 5% alcohol. So just a Mike's 24 ounce, that's enough that if you drink that, you can't drive. If you drink that in an hour, you cannot drive, period. So if you're inebriated enough to not be able to legally drive, you're inebriated enough to not be able to legally engage in legal matters. And
right.
So she wouldn't help you because you offended her senses by asking her to be sober, which you have 100% right. You have a right to tell me, Mandy, I need you to be sober when you do this. I don't drink. Can't pull that against me. I don't drug. Can't pull that against me.
Now, the other thing is,
coffee.
She was a friend of mine. And, obviously when I had gotten a hold of her, it was to try to basically pick her brain as a professional and try to get help. But I did call her on her own private time. So she is allowed to drink.
Yes, she's allowed to drink on her own private time.
So she wasn't doing anything wrong by drinking, obviously. It was the fact that she was, like most people, when I try to talk to them and they've been drinking, it deprives your brain of oxygen, and you're going to act differently, react differently, and people don't like being told, hey, could you call me when you're sober? Could you remain sober?
Yeah,
with your experience, with somebody who is at risk, who is in a household with alcoholics or with meth addicts, like
Yeah.
how volatile is that situation?
Yeah, Jerry Springer ain't got nothing on that. Nothing. Not only that, but for
You
any
become a
at-risk.
pawn for all of their arguments.
Yeah, and anybody who is an at-risk adult, especially people that are on the spectrum, being around alcoholics and addicts, which are the same thing, just different chemicals, it can be very unsafe. It is very unsafe. It's overwhelming. I know for me, and I am on the spectrum, I cannot handle inebriated people that can't focus on what they need to do. And drunk people like to touch you, they like to repeat themselves, and they like to be all lovey-dovey or extremely violent. It's an extreme. That's why I have a very strict no alcohol allowed in my house, period.
Now, with this, is this
Horrible.
more complicated than taxes?
Fuck yeah.
All right.
This is very complicated. You don't have, okay, this incident happened, and then this and this and this. It's not. It's this happened, and this up here, and then this down here, and then it comes, and then it's a fucking family tree from Alabama.
Right.
It's like a family tree from fucking Alabama. Yeah. It's very complicated, and you are going to need what the police would call a war room. You need a war room to go through this evidence. You need a room where you can organize and put things up and have it laid out in a manner that people can follow. You can't shove 5 years of this complicated everything into 7 days. There's no way. No way. And I have seen the evidence of Natalie setting you up, Natalie and Alicia and Maddie slandering you and lying about you and not caring. And then after Natalie died, people looking at you because she set you up, nobody wanting to look at what you had. And it just snowballed from there because, oh, Sean's a stalker of creepy little girls. No, we will be having a statement from somebody who was underage on the streets with Sean and can state what life was like with Sean.
Getting scared off.
Yeah, if you're not 18, you're 12, get out of here.
Yep. Now, when you're in a situation where people screaming and yelling is a trigger for you, and you're having to listen to that every night, is like with the taxes thing. Part of the thing that I was trying to explain with that, like with this being more complicated than taxes. Let's say there's kids and they're not, yelling and beating each other up or anything. They're just being
Children.
loud. Can you do your taxes while that's going on?
No.
Now imagine that those children are adults and they're screaming at each other while they're drunk, and they're the ones who own the environment you're staying in.
No.
How scary is that?
That is very frightening. It causes anxiety because I have been in those types of situations of being in environments at the I can't think of the word, but they're being gracious enough to allow me into their home, but yet their home is toxic and it is violating the boundaries I need to keep myself safe and myself safe. And having screaming for anybody not on the spectrum, much less somebody who is autistic, it's going to be very overwhelming, and your anxiety goes up, your ability to concentrate goes down. If you hit survival mode, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't be able to. I'd rather be sleeping behind a dumpster and eating my breakfast out of it too, than to have that kind of constant drunken, inebriated bullshit.
Now, obviously, we've been trying to focus on the most recent stuff and also where it started, and there's a lot in between that we haven't even touched.
Yep.
Sorry about the belch. With the things that I've been trying to show you, if I was to just leave it on you and just let you go through it, how much more complicated would it be to try to get everything out?
It would be very hard because as I've gone through, like what I have gone through and been able to read and organize is this. That's what I've been able to get through.
That's it.
That's it. I have, well, this is not one I've gone through that. I have, these are all wooden papers. This that I haven't gone through yet on a couple of other incidences with the police. It's very complicated. And then I come across things and I'm like, what does this mean? Because it's important evidence, but I wasn't involved. Like this right here, your statement from the hospital in Virginia. If I just came across that and I was like, oh gosh, I'm not really sure where that goes. I don't know what it means. I need you to be able to also be here and explain to me what is what. Same with the what I term the prison Bible, which is that big old. It's right up here. Yeah, this. This is the prison Bible because it's kind of Bible sized, and it's copies of inmate interview requests, or what people call a kite, for people who are incarcerated to request different things. It's just full of it. And part of
Some
this,
of those
this is just Sarah Nelson. That's it. We've already talked about that. And there's a lot in here that aren't directed to her that are about her that I haven't been able to get through. This right here is probably going to be a 2 to 3 day project for me.
Now
put back on the shelf.
Have I been able to show you that I have gone to many mandated reporters about this?
Yeah. The police, multiple jurisdictions. You tried in Garden County. They wouldn't allow you to even file it. You've done it in LCC. They would not listen to you. You've done it on video. Anybody who views Sean's YouTube videos and hears this abuse and sees the evidence are required to report it. And
all of you in Nebraska, every single one of you in Nebraska who watches these videos, you are required to report the abuse by law.
And I think a lot of other states have that same law.
There are a few of them. Mm-hmm. Most of them, it's only if you're in a professional capacity.
Okay, like Colorado's professional capacity only.
Yep, that means police, hospital workers. Even if you're a janitor in a hospital, you're still technically a mandated reporter.
The only professionals that aren't are lawyers and priests.
And priests now, I believe in the state of Colorado, they changed that.
They have to if it concerns bodily harm and murder.
And does this include bodily harm and murder?
Definitely, yes. If the initial complaints had been listened to back in 2017, things would not have escalated and gotten out of hand to the point that Natalie arranged her own murder. Period. She would not be dead if people had listened and it had been addressed, because then she would have been held accountable for what she had said and she would have been able to get help. But people didn't want to step up. I was unavailable when this was happening in my own path. That's not pertinent to your story. So
also, she was not in the state of Nebraska when I first brought this to her. So there's
I was not. I was in Colorado.
There's the conversations with Shannon Alvarado that they're on my YouTube, but obviously you haven't seen them or listened to them yet. But with Shannon Alvarado, whenever I try to address how the issue with her screaming, with her yelling, with her getting drunk, and her and Rick yelling, she wants to keep on redirecting and blaming it on her autistic daughter. How prevalent is that?
I'm sorry, my brain just went. If you have an autistic child, the last thing you need to be doing is getting drunk and loud and screaming and violent around that child. That is traumatizing, and that is abuse. Period. That is not okay. That is a form of abuse for somebody on the spectrum, especially if they're on the less functioning side of it.
And she's on the lower end of the spectrum. She doesn't speak or anything of that nature. And that makes it so that literally Shannon can blame anything on her daughter at any point in time, and her daughter cannot defend herself.
No,
I do want to point out, Shannon Alvarado is not physically violent.
No.
She's not. She doesn't hit her daughter. She doesn't hit her son. She doesn't hit her boyfriend.
Just verbal.
She does often talk about how she would kill somebody if this happened, or kill somebody if that happened, or that if those people were there, that she would kill them, and so on and so forth. But I mean, that's just verbal. I mean, she's not actively going out pursuing killing anyone. You know,
It's talk at this point.
exactly. But how prevalent is it for disabled children to be used in that capacity by alcoholic or drug addict parents?
It's a crutch. It's an easy out.
Now,
Very easy out. It's very, very prevalent with children on the spectrum and their parents, and it's damaging to the children. It has been proven they need a safe, sane, and secure environment that does not have violence in it. And when I say violence, I'm not meaning just physical, but verbal, emotional. That's scary.
Now, in a lot of my videos, I do explain that her daughter is actually, for given her disabilities, she actually is very well behaved until Shannon starts screaming and yelling, and then she starts to react to that.
That's a trigger
Now,
for people on the spectrum. And I know with my grandson being young and not yet diagnosed, but obviously on the spectrum, the louder I get around him, the louder he becomes and the more reactive he becomes. It's going to cause, and then of course, how is the adult? And if you are inebriated under any form and not of a sober mind, that's you're not going to recognize your child needs calmness. That's concerning. That's concerning.
now for somebody, whether they're on the spectrum or not, with PTSD and childhood trauma, is it important to, when somebody is telling you that they're going to help, is it important for them to tell you that they're an addict, in your personal opinion, before you invest the time and resources to go there for their help?
Yes, I think anybody offering to help anybody else who's coming from a trauma point needs to be clear about their personal life. Listen, I'm in recovery. I have limited resources. I have family obligations. I have appointments of my own. This is what I can give you. It's called full disclosure. Anything less than that it's manipulation. Like, they're tricking you. Why wouldn't you disclose that to somebody?
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not okay, because you're coming into an environment thinking, I can breathe, my stuff can be out, I'm safe, I'm going to be able to do this. And then you're realizing that they're more worried about their fix, because they got to get the drink in them, they got to get the drug in them. And then the focus is no longer on your safety and your ability to have a stable place to take care of this horrendous situation. It blows my mind repeatedly. That's not the focus. The focus is them and their needs and what they're willing to do to get their fix, and what you can do to help them get that fix. You are not a person. You are just a tool to get to the end.
Now, when you confront someone about how their alcoholism or their drug use is affecting you and is affecting your situation, what are the chances of that person getting volatile?
Very, very high, especially being it's their space. It's very, very high. I would just leave the situation if I could, because it's my home and I'll do what I want.
In my situation at that point in time, with having my disability money taken away because I was incarcerated for way too long, what were my chances of even getting out of that situation?
0. Especially in Nebraska. Especially in Nebraska, because the resources are limited and they're insufficient. Period.
I traveled all the way to California because Shannon Alvarado offered to help that off.
I get that there.
Sorry about my ADOS squirrel.
Yeah, we have multiple devices here just to get this stuff done.
There's too much for just one device, and most of my devices are full. A lot of the reason for me to constantly be having to have different numbers is because I have to buy prepaid phones. I don't have the money to have a full contract for an entire year. I have to budget my money.
And you don't have an address to allow you to get a government phone.
Well, I don't. The thing is, I with my phone, it's all right. The address thing, with whether it's a government phone or not, the point with that is that if I'm incarcerated for longer than 30 days,
You lose
then
your benefits.
they take away all of my benefits. Also, my phone becomes inactive, and then they give my phone number to someone else. Then a lot of these people that I've been in contact with that offered to help, I let them know. I get a hold of them and say, hey, could you call me? And then, of course, they're calling numbers that are no longer active, numbers that I can no longer use. There's also the fact that if I call 911 on a number that's no longer active, it wipes the phone. It literally wipes the phone. And it did that on my flip phone, and it did it on several of my other phones, because when I had to go um, from Scottsbluff at the hospital and try to walk all the way to Chapel, Nebraska, because that's what they did when I tried to turn in to Scott DaCosta, his deputies who had tried to threaten, harass, and intimidate me into leaving town, that being Cody Selhorst and Jared Hahn. They took me to the hospital, told the hospital that I was bipolar, and then left. And I had to, with a bad back and screwed up knees, a screwed up ankle, screwed up hip from police abuse. Now I'm having to walk with a backpack full of evidence that Jen Beebe dropped off at the hospital. And I'm having to walk with that from Scottsbluff, Nebraska to Chapel, Nebraska. Um, that's a very scary situation, very scary. And that was 4th of July. Now, it's obvious that I have attempted to turn this in on multiple occasions, and with mandated reporters telling me they're afraid for their kids. You know what? If the at least 200 mandated reporters that I have taken this to were to actually speak up, that would make all of the difference in the world. That's 200 mandated reporters that I have gone to. And, you know, honestly, it's probably more than that, because everywhere I went, I was trying to tell people what was actually going on, but they were busy blowing me off and giving me the mentally ill treatment. And of course, the homeless male treatment, which is basically, yeah, you don't matter, go away, or we're going to arrest you. Um, Now, obviously, with a lot of these people, I did try to keep their names safe, and I tried to keep their families safe. But with all of the people that came forward to begin with that have children that were targeted, like, do you feel that I was wrong in being angry at Candace Bondurant for the things that she did?
No. I mean, that was a fucked up situation. And I get she was put in a really tough spot, but taking somebody in, and yes, situations happen. From what she said, her landlord was pressuring her to get you out in 3 days, which is not legal. Anyways, that's, yeah, the laws for protection versus what you actually get for protection in Nebraska are vastly different. And it's very hard to get the help you need to be backed up.
Now, I knew Candace from
She put you out in the
Nebraska.
cold.
She did. She threw me to the wolves, and she knew that it was going to be below zero, and she did state that in our conversations.
Yes,
That was
she did.
in Haxton, Colorado. The reason that was a great location because Laura Nelson was able to come and see me and at least try to help. But of course, none of these people came forward. They're all afraid to. They have admitted to the law enforcement. Laura Nelson even admitted to Sean Holloway that she was afraid for her kid. I mean, this is stuff that the police are going out of their way to prey upon. They know that we're afraid. Now, also with my evidence, um, have you seen evidence that people are trying to destroy the things that I say and get me shut down and get me shut up?
Yes.
And is it still ongoing?
Yes, it is still ongoing. Right now, you're in a position where, with your upcoming court date, they could easily find some bullshit charge trumped up again and pull you over. Oh, guess what? You have this warrant. We got to take you in. We're going to impound your car. We're going to take everything in your car, all your evidence, and you're going to be fucked.
And they've done that twice already.
And they have, yes, and I have seen the video of the incident in the motel room where they came in and took fucking everything.
Well, there was also the evidence when I was trying to turn in Amanda Jones in Longmont, and I had to turn it into Amanda Jones.
Yeah, repeatedly they keep telling you to contact the person you're trying to turn in, and that's, again, my brain goes, wait, that doesn't work. You know, if my therapist is sexually abusing me and being inappropriate and I get that documentation, I don't go to her to get help. I go to her supervisor, or I go, like, there's specific people you go to, and Sean has followed that chain of command only to be denied. And then that next step up, they started with discrediting and harassing you. And this whole Sean is schizophrenic, Sean uses drugs, Sean is mentally ill is all their word against the documentation you have stating what is really going on. You are on the spectrum and you suffer from PTSD.
Now, according to the DSM-5, in order for somebody to be diagnosed with schizophrenia, they have to exhibit those traits for 6 months or longer.
Yep.
So when you have a doctor who, or many of these other things, when you have a doctor who is making decisions based on something that a police officer told a nurse, and the nurse wrote it down as if it were the truth, is that doctor going to be able to make the right decisions?
No. And if you, especially if you go in, so Sean is detained, arrested, put in the mental hospital. The arresting officer says, well, he's schizophrenic. The nurse writes that down, and the doctor reads that without getting documentation of that. And then he's like, oh, well, look at how he's behaving, which is a trauma response. Let's medicate him. That is very dangerous. People, if you are not schizophrenic and you're given schizophrenic medications, that's going to short circuit your brain. You're going to have a bad reaction. I know that happened. I mean, it's not okay.
People are dead from that. People
Yes.
in recent history here in
Have died.
Nebraska and in Colorado, yes.
From inappropriate from medicating people inappropriately. You're not supposed to apply that medication without a diagnosis.
Now,
period.
The Tibor Hatay was killed at Clearview.
Yes.
Do I have documentation that I was at Clearview?
You were at Clearview, and the documentation is in regards to incident where you got really agitated, and the different behavioral health workers at Clearview, I believe there's 3 different ones. Every one of them in their statement to the police say Sean was calm and talking until he took his medication.
They injected it into my ass, by the way.
They did not say that. They say Sean went in his room and took his medication. It was medication time. After that, he became agitated, and that escalated into the incident where the police were involved. Rather than them being held accountable for injecting medication into somebody who doesn't need that type of medication, Sean is the one that was being held accountable through the law. Not only that, but did they inject that medication? Do they have a med license? Are they licensed through the state to be allowed to administer medication like that? You have to. I can't just go in and go, oh, I got my whatever many hours to be a peer support specialist and work in a behavioral health unit that does not have staffed, trained medical personnel, and then inject him with medication. That's against the law. You can't even administer medication unless you have that certification.
Many of these places told me that the doctor, which I had never actually even seen the doctor had ordered me to be drugged. And the doctors were not present. The doctors were not there. The doctors did not know what was going on. They were taking the opinions of obviously based on the articles and the evidence against Clearview, they did not have medical professionals in the facility.
No, that was proven after Tibor, I hack his name.
Tibor Hatay.
Yeah, Tibor Hatay. I mean, they're shut down now. And how legal is that for a doctor to prescribe you medication when they've never even seen you and evaluated you appropriately?
Now, how appropriate do you think it is that they held those charges over my head for 4 years, preventing me from turning in any of my predators in law enforcement because that was over my head?
That is completely inappropriate. You were detained. You were administered medications that were not suitable for you. You were, they lied about it. And like just all along.
Now,
You can't say somebody's schizophrenic without having the letters behind your name allowing you, and you have to document sessions and, like you said, 6 months of the behavior.
now, obviously, none of these places diagnosed me as schizophrenic.
No, I haven't read any record stating that a mental health professional who is qualified to make that diagnosis, none of them recorded in the documentation that they evaluated you and diagnosed you, and much less were you evaluated long term over 6 months to get that diagnosis. What I have seen is that you have Marcia Estrada stating you are not schizophrenic. Your PTSD may manifest in behaviors that make people think you are, but you are not. It is a trauma response.
What they might manifest is the same thing as what do you call it? Bipolar.
Yeah, bipolar. That's
and
right.
Those
she
are
did say
trauma
nothing
responses.
about schizophrenia.
Well, as far as that goes, but she did say loud and clear that I do not have schizophrenia. She stated that very loud and clear, and she is qualified to make such a diagnosis. Now, obviously, in those videos, did I ask her to write it down?
Yes, you asked her to write it down, which she has not done.
I need it documented. Now, all of this is based on what officers do when you try to turn them in. They call you mentally ill, try to pretend that you're schizophrenic, or they lock you up on trumped up charges, because as long as you have charges over your head, they won't let you turn in those officers. The fact that they tried to trump up these charges after finding out that I was trying to turn them in, because I do have to put it on YouTube, shows intent, it shows motive, and it shows the crime itself outright.
Yeah.
With obviously, you've spoken with quite a few people who knew me on the streets.
Oh yeah.
What are their?
I know a lot of the
me?
people who knew you on the streets, and I know when back in like 18. Yeah, it was back in 18 when you were posting up videos and contacted, like Joseph and I had seen you asking to die. Joseph was very concerned and told me to call you.
Now,
said,
is
call
that
him.
Is that in my nature to do
No.
any of this stuff in the last 5 years that
No.
I've had to do?
No, not at all. Not at all. This is not the Sean that I met in 2014 at all. And when I've spoken with, and I'm not going to release her name yet at this point because I'd rather have the documented statement from her.
That way she's not threatened or harassed.
Yeah,
into
threatened or
not doing
harassed
so.
in any way. But she, at the time we were on the streets in 14, she was 14, 15 years old. And she told me, yeah, Sean told me, if you're not 18, you're 12, go away. She's the one who told me that. I didn't hear that out of Sean's mouth, that if you're not 18, you're 12. And she told me how Sean was not mean and rude and hostile towards her, but he was very clear that she could not be out there on the streets among the adults. And then she also said that she knew if she was in trouble, she could go to you. You were not around when she had trouble.
That's part of the reason that I have so much documented evidence and so on and so forth of people telling me about their predators, is they thought that I would be able to help them. There were a lot of minors, and I'm going to admit this, sorry. There were a lot of minors who did come to me with problems. And one of them, her name is Rachel Klang. She's an adult now. And her mom when Rachel sent me a friend request on Facebook, I turned her down and I let her mom know that she was sending me a friend request, that I wasn't comfortable with having minors on my page. And her mom said that it was all right, that she could handle it. And the first thing that Rachel did was tell me about her sister molesting her and her dad beating her. Um, how likely was I to be listened to in Boulder, Colorado by the police trying to turn that in?
No, no, they don't listen. They do not listen. If you are a homeless person, the help is very limited.
Now, even if I have the evidence and I'm trying to show it to them, trying to show them the Facebook message from Rachel Klang, what are the chances of them
You're
even looking at
homeless.
it?
They don't want to look at it. They don't want to speak about it. And I've seen it. I've seen it over and over with cases. I mean, when I went through my case with Mike, that took having somebody who worked in the Bridge House and was a case manager with letters after her name. She was a therapist too, a mental health worker, going to bat for me. Otherwise, they would have never taken my report because he had done the same thing to another homeless woman, and the police tried to arrest her initially. And when it came out what had happened, he got like 2 weeks of jail time and work release for a sex crime.
Now,
They don't fucking care.
How many of the people that you have spoken with have admitted that they didn't come forward because they didn't think their voice mattered or they wouldn't be heard?
Well, the young woman I talked to today said that. She goes, I don't think I matter. I don't think what I have to say isn't going to matter because and she's not even homeless at this point in time. She's done well for herself, but yeah, our voices don't matter. She said the people who matter aren't going to be heard. The people who matter in this situation and the people who are speaking the truth are not going to be heard.
Now, it's people offering to come forward and speak up, which obviously a lot of people have and tried. I got to tell them I don't know who to even go to. Now, with that going on, obviously, who do we go to? Who do these people speak with? Because many of them are angry because I spoke up on YouTube and on Facebook. But, the thing is, I didn't know who to go to. I still don't because they all turned me down.
That's a really good question because who do you go to when the people you're supposed to go to say, that's outside of my scope of capacity. That's outside of what I'm allowed to do legally within my job. I can only help with community resources and housing. I can't help with legal issues. Well, you go to legal aid and legal aid's like, I can only help with this limited scope of stuff.
So basically, you're running around to 30 different places and getting no help from any.
Exactly. And I've had that happen to me here.
Now, are all these places government funded?
Yes.
And these places that you're told to go to by these other services, how many of them just tell you all they can do is send you to another resource?
All of them. Not just to you. I've been running around doing that too. And my situation is nowhere near yours. I'm not being harassed. I'm not being illegally charged with anything. I just have resources I need to find. And I pissed off the wrong person when I was in a meltdown. And then, go here. Nope, can't help you. Go here. Nope, can't help you. Everywhere I go I don't know what to do. So now I'm just not doing anything because I don't know what to do.
In your personal opinion, after what you've seen, are my meltdowns from long-term abuse or is it because of autism?
Both. I'm going to say, well, first of all, being on the spectrum can cause our meltdowns to be very severe. But your meltdowns were not frequent nor severe prior to this trauma. I did not know you to ever have a meltdown like this. The young woman I spoke with on the phone today said the same thing, that this behavior of yours was not what happened before Natalie set you up and lied about you. Period. And what she said too, and this is all stuff she's going to write out a statement, was that she said, I don't have any professional training and I can see it. So I don't know what is wrong with all these people where they cannot see it's blatantly obvious what started all this. She was embarrassed. She was stuck between a rock and a hard place. You were the easier person to throw away than turning on her whole family. And so she allowed them to put a bug in her ear. She went along with the lies, and it snowballed. It went from he came out here to Virginia to stalk me to you're now a predator and you're preying on underage children. And oh, by the way, you're schizophrenic and you're bipolar and you're crazy and you do drugs. And all it was a miscommunication caused by a defective electronic device. That wasn't even something that you chose. Like, it was something that was given to you.
Well, the other thing is, like, I really did care about them, and you're not supposed to look a gift horse in the mouth. I didn't even know that phone was broken until she'd already changed everything over and handed it to me. So, one of the things was I had tried to explain to Alicia, and of course you haven't gotten to see the messages
Not
between
from
her
Alicia
and I,
yet,
just the ones between me and Natalie. The thing is that we do mention in some of the screenshots that I sent you from the flip phone as well. Obviously the information about that shows that yes, Alicia was changing over the account to her name, and I was trying to get the account information and so on. But how difficult is it for somebody with a situation like that to be able to contact people when their number is now gone?
You're not going to be able to. Like, your number's gone, and nobody carries a physical phone book around. If the phone is broken and you can't get into it, there's all your contacts are gone. And she took you from a flip phone into a smartphone. So you had to set up everything all over again. All your contacts from your flip phone were not going to transfer to a smartphone. That's something you would have to manually do on a broken phone. And then, as you had said, the flip phone, you called 911 and it wiped it out.
Yep. Well, it still had some stuff on it, but it wiped out my call log.
Yes.
It wiped out all of that stuff. And, obviously that phone ended up getting stolen in Washington State. I haven't gotten to show you any of that stuff yet. But so far, what I've showed you so far, if I've been honest,
I have not found one thing yet that's been dishonest. Sean has told the truth about everything. Absolutely everything. The good, the bad, and the ugly. He has admitted when he has broken the law. He has admitted when he has been verbally abusive and bullying. You've admitted it all. Because I've asked you, and I've also made comments about it, and you said, no, that is what I did. Not once have you tried to hide your behavior in this situation at all. And not once have you said this happened and not had screenshots or paperwork or some sort of documentation to back it up that is not fabricated. All of this stuff is true. You are not deep faking this. You do not have a printing press somewhere faking the paperwork from the prison. It is very, very clear. It is, and I've never known you to be dishonest, ever. I've never known a lie to come out of your mouth. Same with the young woman I talked to today. Joseph had said the same thing, that you were completely honest. You were one of the most trustworthy people that we had.
Now,
and you didn't hang out in groups with everybody else. You stayed by yourself and helped out people when they needed it. Go to Starbucks, Sean. He'll be there.
Right. Yep.
Yep. Unless you're 12, if you're not 18 and you're 12, you better go to the source or some other.
Now, there was a lot of adults out there that were also trying to get these kids to go away, and a lot of them were less nice than I am.
Oh, yeah.
But the kids still went to homeless people with home abuse issues, did they not?
Absolutely, all the time.
And how many of those kids do you think were probably sent to me?
All of them. If they had a problem, all of them. If they didn't know where to go, Sean was the person to go to. Sean, as you had said, you were told to protect one child because she was getting beaten at home and there was no safe place for her.
Now, when a homeless person disappears, now you had gone through the protocol with me the other day. You were explaining it. Could you explain for them what the protocol is when somebody disappears?
Well, yes, homeless person disappears and you go down to the police or you call the police and say, this person is missing. I need to file a missing persons report. You are told they are homeless. We cannot file that report. That happened with my son. They refused to file a report. His brother drove from out here in McCook, Nebraska, down to Boulder with a pregnant wife, and they said, no, he's homeless. We will not file a report, even though we had evidence on phones. He checked in once a week with either his brother or his sister.
Now, where do we check for homeless people before we try to make a report?
We check the jails, we check the hospitals.
And how many people get involved in that?
Well, just the homeless people. Now, the amount of homeless people I have seen when I was looking for somebody, and I happened to have a phone, and this lady's like, give me the phone, and there was 5 of us over there trying to figure out where somebody was, and she located them. Wait, call this person. Oh, wait, I got this number. Call this place, because you can't just call the hospital.
There's more than one hospital. Yeah. There's more than one
detox,
location.
There's the mental.
Yep.
And if you're calling mental or anywhere with mental, you can't. They're not going to tell you, yes, they're here. What they're going to say is, we can neither confirm nor deny the person is here. Would you like to leave a message in case they're here? Period. That's all you can do. And you got to hope if they are there, they actually get the message and they can contact you back, because sometimes you are denied access to a phone. And that is my personal experience as well.
Now, how often when calling the police department, the police station, and the jails, how often did they claim somebody was not in jail who actually was?
A lot. They will hold them in intake for days and not book them. So you're just sitting there and nobody knows where you're at.
Now, I want to touch on another person that we both know, Brian Gray. He went by Leprechaun.
Yeah,
what
Leprechaun.
happened to him?
He went to jail on a homeless warrant, which would be either be like camping, trespassing, something that requires our survival. And he was released at 2:00 in the morning without appropriate gear. He had none of his gear, none of his sleeping gear at all. He was not appropriately dressed. They gave him a bus ticket when buses did not run. And where the jail is located in Boulder, you aren't going to be able to just, oh, look, here's a building. I can, get some cardboard and try to stay warm. There's nothing out there for safety. And he was found with his feet in the creek, dead from hypothermia. And it was 5 days before Lola was able to locate and find him. She knew he had been in jail, but I remember she was telling everybody, anybody heard from Leprechaun? Anybody heard from Leprechaun? He's not in jail anymore. And
they didn't even book him. They
No.
took his stuff to property and evidence,
Yep.
and then they released him without a jacket. They released him in a t-shirt in the middle of a blizzard. That's
It was
exactly
right before
what Candace
Thanksgiving.
did to me.
Yeah, it was right before Thanksgiving of 2014. I remember that because we all held a wake of sorts for him right around Thanksgiving.
And we have a lot of those.
Yeah. Well, when I say we all, it was the crew that I ran, the group I had at the end of Pearl Street outside of Old Chicago, that I kind of took over that spot and started, monitoring it. And people came to me. They came to me for safety, for blankets, for help. I made sure the women on the street were protected. And I don't have, again, lots of technology, but there were numerous women who came to me for issues with men abusing them or inappropriate behaviors.
Now, the things that I've done that have been considered inappropriate or even illegal, do you feel or believe that given this situation that it was necessary for me to do those things to save lives?
Yes, and I do believe if people had done their jobs like they were supposed to, you would have not been pushed to the point of desperation and despair. That's what I see. Desperation and despair. I don't know what else to do. You're backed into a corner. You can't get out of that. And you have done illegal things. You have broken the law. But that is not something that is within your character. I have to take this as a personal call.
All right, well, I'm going to
in
end
the
this
other room.
video then.
Absolutely. Ah.